So, good afternoon, everyone. What a day it has been and what a day it continues to be. We've had some fascinating discussions and speeches and interventions, including from all of you, the participants, on One Africa, how to build it, turning the vision into reality through practical steps. And I have to say, what has really struck me so far is the voice of women. There are not many women on this panel, I'm afraid, but thank you, Jackie, for being here with me. I had said I wouldn't moderate a panel with only men. That's our philosophy. So really, really happy so far to have all of you there. And as I said earlier, this room is much more intimate, and I have to say creates a better energy for me than the vast room where we were before, where I felt really disconnected from all of you. And I see some faces in the room who I really expect to intervene and interact. Just a few words from me. So I'm Shada Islam. I'm Director for Policy at Friends of Europe. It's a think tank based in Brussels, working very, very closely on African relations, Africa-EU relations, and we run several conferences. I hope some of you can attend those. Some of you already have, on trying to change the African narrative, but now also more specifically on digital Africa, I have to say. So digital technology, I don't have to tell you, is really transforming Africa, transforming Africa's image and story in the rest of the world. And stories, as I said earlier, are really important. So we have the potential to leapfrog and disrupt traditional development models. And, I was talking to some members of this panel earlier, so last night, and we were saying you can't really get One Africa or the CFTA without digital. I mean, you have to break down national barriers, create stronger e-commerce channels, you have to create connectivity, you have to bring people together, and you can't really do that in today's world through roads and bridges and brick and mortar. You actually have to do it through digital connectivity. And the other thing that really is a message that I'm taking from here and also taking back to Europe is that African tech entrepreneurs are already doing it. I've heard your voices, I've heard your stories from women and from young men as well, and these are magnificent stories of creativity, innovation, energy, and what we really need, I don't have to tell you, is the enabling environment, the regulatory frameworks that are needed to unleash this potential, to unlock the potential that we have. My question to the panelists here are several, really, and in addition to what we've agreed we will talk about, I'll ask you to look at some other issues as well. Is the CFTA, this Continental Free Trade Area, giving enough attention to the digital channels? Are we paying enough attention to the digital dimension of the free trade area? What is being done or what can be done about challenges of cross-border interoperability? We're talking technical stuff here, but if your companies can't talk to each other, if your standards are different, how likely is it that you'll be able to engage in the cross-border interaction conversations that we want everyone to do? What about the urban-rural divide? It was said in a panel this morning that, it's still up to 80 to 90% of Africans still live in rural areas. And there is a widening, but I hope a decreasing urban-rural divide. What about women's access to technology and the problems that some women entrepreneurs face about direct access to finance, to credit that we talked about earlier as well? Regulatory challenges, access to finance for everyone. What about the skills that are needed? Ashish Thakkar this morning from Mara talked about the need for skills and also about how he's employing so many, I think thousands of workers in his factories. And of course the issue that we cannot, the elephant in the room, if you like, which is the issue of security, cybersecurity also, when we talk about digital. So let me very briefly, I insist briefly, introduce this magnificent panel. There are 8 people, and if I gave your CVs, your impressive CVs, read them out loud, I think we'd be here for about half an hour. So I'm going to be very short. Bear with me, I'll be succinct. So we'll kick off with Mr. Papa Amadou Sarr. He's Minister General Delegate for Women and Youth Entrepreneurship in Senegal. We'll kick off with you, sir, and then we'll move on. Then we'll have Umar Yam, co-founder of WeCarry. WeCarry provides a delivery service for online orders in West Africa, so very, very important. And I think, Umar, you have quite a say in what's happening in Senegal as well. So really glad to have you here. Khalifa Fall, Chief Executive Officer of Zoom Wireless, also working in the issue on internet access and technologies in the Gambia. Really happy to have with us also Mamadou Biteye. He's Vice President, Social Impact, Central Europe, Middle East and Africa for Visa. So financial issues there, fintech if you like. Munir Duri has not yet arrived, but he's on his way. I think you probably know him. He's Chief Executive Officer for Kifia Financial Technologies here in Ethiopia. And the list goes on. We have Mr. Paul Hansdorfer, Senior Director, International Business, ASECO Poland, working on security issues, cybersecurity issues in emerging markets. Also, I have to say, a very gallant man who saved me from the downpour I had to deal with yesterday. Very happy to have you here, Jackie Ochola, Country Director for Andela. So really happy. And this is also strategic leadership and direction of the Ugandan office. And last but not least, so we have Alex Natale, who's agreed to speak last, Chief Executive Officer, Rwanda ICT Chamber. So voila, we have quite an impressive list. Each of these gentlemen and the lady has a really strong story to tell. And as I said earlier, you have strong stories to tell as well. So we really want interaction as we kick off. Minister Sar, you said you would like to kick off with a PowerPoint. So I ask you, if you want to, you can go up to the lectern or you can do it from here. Choice is yours.
I'll go there.
Yeah, please, no worries.
5 minutes. One, I don't need to present myself. Shada did it very well already. And I would like to, first of all, thank the organizers, ITC and the EU, for hosting such a successful event so far. And I'm very thrilled to be part of this panel discussion. To start off the discussion, I wanted to briefly say what we, as government of Senegal, have been doing over the last couple of years to support the ecosystem of entrepreneurs. Mr. Yam will come back to the details because he has been one of the beneficiaries of the program I'm leading. So what we call the General Delegation for Entrepreneurship for Women and Youth was an initiative of President Macky Sall created end of 17. We started working on it in 18 to support the entrepreneurs, women and youth, based on a survey we did throughout the country to identify the obstacles and problems facing entrepreneurs. Amongst them, throughout the continent, we have access to finance, we have access to education, good capacity building and training facilities. Also, obstacles we had were things related to fiscal, taxation of the startups and the SMEs, among other stuff. And what we did as a state is to try to support these entrepreneurs by setting up a $50 million a year from government to support those entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs through 4 key instruments being debt, guarantee, equity, and quasi-equity plus training. This is to promote a strong entrepreneurial spirit, give those entrepreneurs, women and men, focusing on women because men are blocked at 40 and there is no limit for women. That's what made us have reached over the last 2 years more than 75% of women entrepreneurs that have been capacitated, funded, supported to grow the business and expand. And the other aspect, over the next 2 years, what we've been able to do is to give away or fund more than $75 million for those startups and SMEs. We've been also try to include financially all those beneficiaries in the fact that every beneficiary of the fund or the support have to be formalized and have to have a bank account. So in terms of financial inclusion, we've been able to open up more than 80,000 bank accounts, both throughout traditional banking system, but also through digital banking with Orange and all the stuff. The objective, and I will turn to the digital, Sada, if you allow, is that Senegal has put an impetus on digital economy. The objective is to contribute to 10% of the GDP over the still 2025 and create more than 35,000 direct jobs throughout the country and invest more than $522 million in the economy. And our entity, the delegation, has been working over the last 2 years, as I said, and we set up a $25 million fund for the next 3 years to support startups and SMEs through seed capital, but also Series A financing to help them grow their business, be it in the logistics, transport, we'll come back to that, but also artificial intelligence, blockchain, and other technologies that are needed to ease the way of doing business, increase the flows of people and goods, but also increase the capacity of hospitals, e-health, e-agriculture, improve agriculture products. Our objective with this innovation fund we call the DARE Innovation Venture Capital Fund is to support every year not less than 50 startups that gain resources, training, coaching, capacity development throughout Senegal and abroad. We have a range of partnership with universities like Draper University in the Silicon Valley, people in Israel, but also next week we'll sign an agreement with Unity to develop VR and artificial intelligence throughout the country and the region. Our objective is really to see the potential in all those business, all those entrepreneurs, women and men, that have the potential of expanding their business, taking up to $200,000 to $300,000 in terms of seed funding to help them invest in technology, to improve their processes, augment the capacity, and reach markets in West Africa region and beyond. The objective is finally, as I would say, as we did last year, I said we put around $2 million into 44 startups, among which we carry, that have been able to develop their business, grow, and raise additional funding. 3 of them have been able to raise $200,000 to $300,000 after we did the initial $100,000 investment to them. And I will finish by that. Shada asked me a question about the role of government. For me, it's clear. As a policymaker, we have to become an enabler. The enabler makes the enabling environment for the startups and the SMEs very friendly, environmentally friendly, and also business attractive. That's why we worked throughout the last year with the World Bank and the private sector and the startups to develop what we call a Startup Act, like the one Tunisia did. And it's gone through government a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to go to Parliament next week, so that Senegal will have its first ever Startup Act that will allow business, the startup, to develop easily. After the Startup Act, we want to support the ecosystem throughout building what we call the DARE Innovation Hub, which is a certain floor building funded by Mohammed bin Zayed, the Prince of Abu Dhabi, will be in Dakar to host startups, SMEs for training, incubation, acceleration. It's going to be a regional center. The objective is all the technology those startups and SMEs look for in California or in Paris at Station F. We'll have it in Dakar to be trained, to be capacitated, having access to technology to help them develop and grow their business. It will become the biggest incubation acceleration center on the continent. Last week, I was at the African Early Investors Summit in Cape Town. When we talked about it and explained them, they said if we do that, it will be even far beyond what they have in South Africa. And this is what I wanted to share with you. To just, as I said earlier, our objective is not to take the place of the private sector, take the place of the bankers, But we want to be part of the game. We want to enable, we want to promote, we want to support, to facilitate trade, to facilitate the flow of information and good and digital economy. That's good for now.
So, Minister, I'll wait for you to come back to your chair, because I do have a follow-up question for you. Thank you very much. Very impressive indeed. So investing not just money, but also, if I may say so, heart and soul into digital Senegal. Given that we're talking also about One Africa and the CFTA, I was just wondering to what extent that sort of figures in your policy and your priorities as you look at digital startups, etc. Please.
As I say, the objective of the government is to increase the government objective is to increase to 10 to 15% in terms of GDP contribution from the digital economy. So that means we have to increasingly digitalize the processes we do business within governments itself, dematerializing the procedures of how we give administrative papers, how we deal with customers, how we deal with customs, how we deal with tax administration, how we deal with treasury, etc., etc. There is a huge program underway right now, which is the digitalization of the financial services throughout the government. That will lead inevitably to the promotion of a digital commerce. Omar will come back to that. Senegal has few platforms that develop that in the e-commerce business that is already spreading beyond Senegal. You have companies and startups that are exporting in Mali, Burkina, Cote d'Ivoire, even in South Africa. And our objective is to increase the capacity, financial, technical, and technological of those startups and SMEs together with the private sector to increase the breadth of the business and also contribute to the free trade agreement.
Okay. Thank you very much for that answer. So, Omar, how are you actually then working with the minister, with the government in the startup sector for digital? Give us some ideas.
Okay, so thank you. I will speak in French because I'm more comfortable. Notre relation avec le gouvernement, en l'occurrence le ministre Sarr, en fait depuis l'arrivée de la délégation, de son ministère, de sa délégation depuis à peu près 2 ans, on a senti un changement dans l'écosystème des startups sénégalais. On voit que, comme il vient d'expliquer, il y a vraiment eu de l'impact à tous les niveaux, mais nos startups sont mieux formées, mieux accompagnées et surtout prêts à être accompagnés par les fonds d'investissement. Pourquoi? Parce qu'ils ont comblé le gap qui existait, qui est le manque de fonds d'amorçage. Les premiers fonds qui permettent à la startup de valider son modèle, de prouver que ce qu'il fait est bon. Voilà. Donc, ayant couvert ce gap, ils ont permis aux startups de scaler. La majorité d'entre eux sont dans plusieurs pays d'Afrique de l'Ouest. Beaucoup arrivent à lever des fonds. Je pense qu'on n'a jamais autant levé de fonds au Sénégal sur ces 2 dernières années. Et pour vous dire le gap qu'ils ont comblé, moi j'avais levé des fonds avant leur arrivée. Mais même avec ça, je n'arrivais pas à avoir des prêts à la banque. Étant un logisticien, j'ai besoin de matériel logistique, surtout de véhicules pour faire des livraisons. Et j'ai été obligé d'avoir recours à eux pour avoir un prêt. Voilà, donc ils ont vraiment impacté notre écosystème, sachant toujours qu'ils ont aidé à créer des emplois décents. Pour une fois au Sénégal, on voit des gens quitter les grands groupes pour aller travailler dans des startups. Ça, c'était jamais vu avant. Et l'écosystème est en train de naître. On partage. Les entrepreneurs sénégalais voyagent de plus en plus. Ils voient ce qui se fait à l'extérieur et essayent d'adapter à notre modèle local. Voilà.
So Omar, you were also yesterday telling me about your conversations or your visit to Alibaba.
Yeah.
And of course, you're in the business of delivery as well. So any ideas that you've come back that you will be putting into motion?
Yeah. Ok. C'est un programme qui a été lancé par Alibaba où ils ont promis de former 1000 entrepreneurs dans le monde en leur présentant ce qu'ils font, leurs modèles, et en les aidant à adapter ces modèles à leur situation locale. Donc, c'est un programme que j'ai fait il y a 3 mois, c'était au mois d'août, où j'ai passé 2 semaines dans le quartier général de Alibaba. Voilà. Donc, c'était en 99. En 99, en Chine, il n'y avait pas de e-commerce, pas d'Internet, rien. Et en 2019, on arrive à avoir 800 millions de personnes connectées, des milliards en paiement Internet, et surtout un e-commerce qui explose avec des milliards de livraisons, 40 milliards de livraisons en 2018. Voilà. Donc,
So what would you wish for yourself, given what's happened in China?
Yeah.
What would you think is your dream, actually?
mon rêve, ça va être qu'on puisse trouver notre modèle de e-commerce en Afrique. On a vu le modèle américain, européen qui se ressemble un peu, le modèle chinois qui est complètement décalé, qui est un modèle de plateforme. Je pense qu'à nous, en Afrique, on a l'obligation de créer aussi notre modèle de e-commerce pour l'adapter à nos réalités locales. Voilà. Donc, parce qu'Alibaba, on ne savait même pas, moi je ne savais pas avant d'y aller qu'Alibaba c'était une boîte technologique. Alibaba ne vend pas de produits, Alibaba n'a pas de voiture de livraison. Tout ce qu'ils font, c'est qu'ils créent des plateformes. Et les gens, c'est des enablers. Et les gens viennent s'y connecter pour pouvoir vendre, pour pouvoir acheter. Et voilà. Donc ils ont plus de 27 plateformes et ça fait le succès que ça fait actuellement. Voilà. Donc ils se basent sur les données. Ça aussi, c'est un appel que je lance. En Afrique, on ne stocke pas nos données, on n'utilise pas nos données. Et Alibaba se base sur ces données pour pouvoir créer la plateforme qui arrive après. Donc, ils font des études fines des données des clients pour pouvoir créer des nouvelles plateformes. Je pense que c'est un challenge pour nous de pouvoir stocker nos données, les traiter. Ça vient à la formation des data spécialistes qui vont pouvoir nous aider à travailler sur ces données et créer de nouveaux produits.
I think later Powell is actually going to talk about data location, etc. So thank you very much. I mean, the book is, of course, Jack Ma's The House That Jack Ma Built. And it's quite an interesting book to read, actually, I have to say. So Khalifa, turning to you. I can't really see all my panelists very well. But so for you, in terms of connectivity, because obviously that's very important, and we heard this morning in various panels that connectivity is still an issue. Digital even more so than brick and mortar connectivity. How are you dealing with these challenges?
Yes, when you talk about the digital Africa and speaking in the context of AFCFTA, I believe that with Africa, to grow the market to 1.2 billion people, we need to digitalize our economies. And part of that connectivity plays a big role. We need last mile connectivity. I've seen governments in Gambia, we have laid fiber cable across the country, but we need to do more. In terms of infrastructure, and I also like to delve into the aspect of trade, because when you speak of e-commerce, like Omar has mentioned, it's about buying the items, but how is it delivered? Mm-hmm. We want to see an Africa where you can buy a shirt from Ghana and ship it to Senegal or Gambia, and it should arrive on time. And these are things that we need to start looking at. How can we harmonize policies? How can we make sure that logistics, but also physical infrastructure, because this will help facilitate trade. There's no sense in me buying something from another country that it takes 8 months to get to me. So we really need to look at how can these be harmonized across borders to ensure swift delivery of items. This will further boost e-commerce trade across Africa.
In terms of, Vision 2063 and all that CFTA talks about at the moment, do you feel, Khalifa, that adequate attention is being paid to this sort of high-tech sector, or are we still stuck in a kind of a time warp where we're still talking about, trade in goods and manufactures and perhaps even services, but, not digital services?
I think efforts are being made to move towards the right direction. And I believe that with the growing crop of young entrepreneurs coming, where most of our businesses are looking into the digital economy, where we can bypass some of these old ways of doing business. And scaling is one of our biggest challenges. And the only way we can scale is to ensure that, one, our financial services sectors are digitalized, where we can do transactions across borders, which I believe will be spoken more in depth. These are some of the factors that need to be considered in order for us to achieve that goal.
Just a very quick follow-up. I'm a very curious person. You know, we've seen from the Senegalese example now that entrepreneurs like Omar are working with government officials, like the minister here. And I was just wondering, is that something that you would say is the way forward, that kind of synergy?
It's definitely the way forward, because...
Does it happen?
We've seen it happening in Senegal, and I hope that, you know, in Gambia also would emulate the same thing, because I feel like it will really drive our economy and at least we have a very large youthful population, and most of us are more into entrepreneurship, and the government should help enable an environment where the youths can thrive. This can bring stability, this can bring employment for the youths, and it will in turn grow our economies and affect our GDP as well.
Thank you. And apologies for the persistent questioning, but thank you very much for all your answers. So let's turn to fintech now. And you know, when we're looking at Africa from outside, the mobile payment systems, the way digital payments have expanded across Africa, gives the impression of a very dynamic sector, and contributing quite, I would say, magnificently, seriously to the local economies, to the domestic economies. I'm just wondering, Munir Duri, welcome, by the way. I know you were stuck in traffic or something. Just wondering to get your impression of it, Munir, and then also from Mr. Bitte here, of the development of mobile financial digital technologies. Where are we headed?
First of all, apologies, I was delayed a little bit, stuck in traffic. If you look at the history of mobile money, it started really in our neighboring country on a peer-to-peer transactions. But more and more so, it is moving to become an infrastructure play in which it's not only digital, but it connects an agent network that acts usually as a cash in, cash out, and more so these days as an e-com delivery point. I think the previous speaker was alluding to the challenge of delivering e-commerce goods. So now we see this mobile payment or mobile money moving away from just a financial services of transfer to becoming a player as a platform in which it connects both the movement of money or the movement of the store of value, which can be made for payments, but also key connection to a physical infrastructure of agents that both act as converting cash to electronic, but more importantly so in the African context, a place of a pickup or a drop-off, which can facilitate trade. So if you look at this evolution, and I think Africa is taking a lead position because of the need and the challenge. If you look at Ethiopia as an example, you have about 1 million square kilometers of land, 110 million people living across evenly this landmass. And there's only way you can reach them, whether it is to undertake exchange of goods or services or the provision of financial services, whether it's for urban setting or the rural setting, mobile as a platform or mobile payments as that digital infrastructure that does both the trade facilitation as well as the exchange of value from point A to point B. So you see this happening in every country in Africa, and Ethiopia is a late comer to that. So we don't have a lot of success stories, but I think it has one of the largest potentials here as well.
Munir, just a very quick follow-up. So I think you weren't here, but we were mentioning the urban-rural divide, and I wonder if mobile payments face that kind of challenge also. and whether women have access to the kind of mobile payment systems as much as other people do. And my final question to you would be, in terms of e-commerce, you have to be able to say, this morning we were saying, if you're buying something, a South African buying something from Botswana, would you have that capacity to pay and get the stuff?
So if you look at really what mobile does, is it creates access. And that's, I think, the key factor. And one of the pilot projects that we did is that we digitized government to citizen subsidy payments, in which, when it was on the cash environment, the recipient has always been the husband. And the wife had little or no access to it. So what mobile money did in that instance is that now the woman, or the wife in this instance, has access to that account, and she starts to decide upon it. And one of the learnings of the pilot was, of the 400 people interviewed, almost unanimously all the women said now they have the financial freedom because now they can control their own assets and their own destinies. So it is very inclusive, and it has that power to include both the excluded communities, both from a financial perspective, but from a gender perspective as well. In terms of e-commerce, payment becomes an infrastructure. Any goods of exchange, whether goods or services without payments, does not have finality. Delivery can be done at an agent point or can be even picked up from a specific location. But the lack of payment infrastructures has, stops trade to happen. And if you look at it with the advent of the signing of the free trade agreement, interoperable payment now becomes a necessity. If anybody from Rwanda, for example, wants to sell to somebody in Ethiopia, then at the end of the day, a mobile wallet that resides in in Rwanda, needs to come to Ethiopia. And we are seeing now interesting models, two models, one in South Africa. Now we have the South African group of countries that are trying to implement an interoperable mobile payment solution. And then we have in West Africa two groups, Orange and MTN, that have recently launched Moali, which allows the two countries to exchange wallets. And then Tanzania is also doing it intra-country as opposed to be cross-border.
It's on the move.
Yes.
Okay, Munir, thank you very much. Okay, Mamadou, I'm going to turn to you with the same questions. I won't repeat them. They'll take time. But you know what I'm talking about. And also the cross-border challenges, please.
Yeah.
You turn it on. I turn it
Okay, no, well, thank you very much. No, I think that the challenge is really to make, as we know, digital payment being really a cornerstone and critical to e-commerce in particularly. How do you make it accessible and affordable to millions who are actually excluded? And as you may know, some of the traditional barriers, such as credit score, such as the necessity to have a bank account, have actually excluded many, about 2 billion people globally from financial services. Yet, if you look at in emerging markets, many have a financial tool right in their pocket, which is the mobile phone when we talk. So basically, for a fintech like us, the largest probably fintech and one of the oldest also, is really looking at how do you tap into that to sort of expand this access. So we do really three things. We do investment, we do partnership, and we do engagement to enable that. Examples of investment that we are doing is really investing into newer fintechs that have the potential of expanding access to digital payment. One of the recent example is a couple of weeks ago we announced actually a partnership with Branch. And what Branch, this partnership does, it actually provides to billions of people what we call prepaid virtual card numbers, which enable any person to receive credit directly at any physical ATM without the requirement to have a bank account. Because before accessing this digital payment required that you have a bank account because it is issued by the bank. So that enables and provides that solution. The second thing is also we continue to, especially for the cross-border, to enable fintechs on Visa rails. That is called VisaNet, which is our global processing platform. And we have created for that a program that is called FinTech Fast Track, because traditionally for us to onboard banks, which are our traditional clients, on this system, it takes several months to do that because of the security and other types of requirement. But for fintechs, we have reduced that requirement to just 4 weeks. So for fintechs that have that potential, through this program, we can enable them and support them to have access to the Visa rail. And that gives virtual access to 220 countries and markets, right? And 65 million merchants that are on this. And finally, in terms of engagement, we've created also what we call Visa Everywhere Initiative, which is a challenge to invite and identify actually those innovative fintechs that are developing these solutions, providing solutions that actually seeks to address the upcoming challenges in the space of digital payment. So really what digital payment in the future should look like, and how do you enable that in a changing world. And this initiative has been running, for instance, in this region, which is Africa, Middle East, and Central Europe, since 2017. And what we do is that we identify the winners actually who have the most promising solutions actually can win $100,000 prize, but also they have the possibility to be accompanied by Visa engineers to actually develop those solutions. So this has been ongoing since 2017. So basically, this is really the three types of approaches that we have actually to expand this access, enabling actually simple. But lastly, we are also in terms of product design as well. Products, because we focus very much on micro and small enterprises, particularly women-led, from a social impact perspective. And how do you enable them beyond digital payment alone, which is a proxy really, right? And how do you use that proxy to access to other actually financial services that they need and that are flexible enough to and tailored to their needs. So that's also something that we are doing to address those issues, to contribute. Yeah.
So Mamadou, just very quickly, you did mention it, but perhaps you have more details about, are you actually partnering with young startups, entrepreneurs? Are you providing some kind of mentorship? Are you providing scholarships? Is any of that sort of, if I may say, corporate social responsibility side of things being taken into account?
Yeah, no, actually we look at this really beyond corporate social responsibility alone, right? We look at it really as social impact, which is really the nexus, yes, of between the business and how we provide that social impact. Yes, definitely. Actually, we have, as I said, really the investment and partnerships in fintechs, but we have social impact programs that focuses specifically on growing micro and small businesses and enabling them actually to access to market. This is why actually we've signed this partnership with ITC and to work with them through the She Trades initiative to enable those. And we look specifically about to address the same barriers that Minister Sarr spoke to, which are really around knowledge and skills, access to services, but most importantly, accompaniment and mentorship. So those support networks, right, which are really peer-to-peer, learning networks, but also with others. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So now we're moving into the domain of security, cybersecurity. And for you, Paul, I was just wondering, explain a little bit your concerns about this and how you're tackling the challenge of ensuring security of data, security of information, knowledge, etc. Please.
Thank you. Excellencies, honorable guests. Thank you to say some words. So I would start, because I was thinking also in the morning, what does the digital Africa means? In my opinion, it is multiple sets or a puzzle, because we have e-government or relation between a citizen and the government. We've got e-commerce, payments, a lot of different aspects, digital identity. There is a huge discussion about the ID for Africa as well. So it's expanding rapidly. It is estimated that within 4 or 5 years, the digital contribution to the economy will grow 4 or 5 times. So it will definitely reach the level above the 10 or more % of the total economy. But what does it develops, and why it is so rapid in Africa? Because of less of legacy systems, as we have in different parts of Europe or US. And it also reveals a huge theater for a possible cybercrime and other risks and vulnerabilities. And what is different from our behavior, and it's a global problem. The cyber criminality does not have any border. You could be attacked from anywhere. And it's a lot of discussions, lot of conferences, lot of books about it. There is, of course, everybody has solutions and ideas. But the main reason is they are very costly and pricey. So only a few companies on Pan-African can afford it. I think on the table only Visa can afford a proper approach to that, to such a problem, because credibility in the digital business is the most important. Also credibility and trust from the citizen to the government services also. So the question arises, how to build affordable services, or sorry, top-class services for affordable price, which states among the African continent or the companies, medium and which will require, can afford. So I will put our Togolese example, which is together with the Republic of Togo, under the Ministry of Economy, Numerique and Post, Madame Sina Lawson. We entered into partnership. That partnership will help the government to establish from absolutely beginning a cybersecurity operations center, which will cover all aspects of the essential infrastructure or critical infrastructure from the economy of state perspective. So from the country perspective, all the main contributors to the economy, risks and the functioning of the country will be somehow covered by that services. So having the economy of scale and multiple players which will contribute to such operations, together till the end of 2020, we will form such an organization which will host services internally. It will be fully Togolese operation, with clear segregation of duties, with clear obligations, agreements, service levels, so everything could be accountable and checked. And due to that, we have that multiple players. The prices are for each individual company, like for e-commerce or other players, can be affordable, even the telecoms. So we solved that issue on that level.
So, Paul, you and I are the only Europeans on this panel. In Europe, we've come up with the GDPR. Do you think this is something, General Data Protection Service, etc. Do you think this is something that could be replicated or inspire Africans, from your point of view, who are engaging in this direction now?
I think our GDPR actually comes from privacy protection. Here, I think the most vulnerable thing, what we have is now a digital identity. If that could be stolen, you are actually without it. But what I strongly believe is, of course, some ecosystems needs to be solved on a level of, let's say, European Union, what we did 2 years ago, and on an African Union level as well. But I will call it a guidances. Then the next step is actually to implement it locally. So I truly like to underline that the biggest protection for each state individual is if they rely on themselves. Rely on themselves, because of course they can team up. Of course, it's a teaming work for the certs and to protect themselves for the cybersecurity. But it's also to have an individual forces locally on the local market actually focused on that issues.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure there'll be some questions. Something's happened to the lights, or is it my eyes? It has. They have dimmed, right? Okay. Maybe we can get them higher. Jackie. So we come now. We're going from topic to topic to do with Digital Africa. So bear with us while we touch on different ideas, different sectors. So skills is something that I thought I would ask you about. How easy, how difficult is it first to impart the skills? Are governments doing it? And secondly, do you find that our African entrepreneurs are coming forward and have the skills that are needed to make Africa digital and transformative?
Good afternoon, and thank you. How are we doing with the skills development for a digital Africa? I would say we are at different levels in different geographies, but I think across the continent, it is recognized and investments are being put into promoting an ICT education, which is essentially what belies a digital future. Speaking of countries that I have worked in and I know quite well, Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, South Africa. In these places, you would be amazed at the extent to which skills development has really advanced. And it is both through the formal education system, it is through organizations employing people and equipping them with skills, it is through companies that are venture funded, investing in new models of learning, and especially delivery of learning through online platforms. Mm-hmm. And so you find that because we now have new ways of learning, we no longer need to have somebody in an institution, in a classroom, in a scheduled timetable to be able to learn. And what we do hope for is that we are going to get to a stage where each one recognizes that it's important to keep learning. Why do we need to keep learning? This is because things change so fast. In the digital world, inventions come up on an almost per second basis. And so what you know today will probably have moved on by the end of the week. And you'll have to keep learning and learning and learning. And so it's really important that in addition to the infrastructure, in addition to national curriculums adopting ICT education, the citizenry across different countries is equipped to own their own learning, to find ways through which they can acquire knowledge, skills, and apply these to the things they do. There are two types of learners. You can learn to use digital services for consumption. Many of us here can surf the internet and can, share pictures. Mm-hmm. But then that is a consumer, you are a user. I am from a telecoms background, and every time I see people on their phones, I keep thinking, lucky telecoms. They are always making money from all of us who can't get off our phones. But beyond that, we need to move to a stage where people are equipped with the skills to create solutions, to create products, to create services. We all know for a fact that digital services is where the real money is right now. I don't have to say how much money Jeff Bezos is making from Amazon. We had the example of Jack Ma. The services layer, and especially digital services, is where money can be made. And so if we can move to a level where the skills that we equip on people with are the skills that will enable them to create so that they can monetize, then the economy will richly benefit from this. This is a journey, but once again, I believe governments, private sector, individuals all have a part to play in this.
Mm-hmm. And what about the issue of coding? And I remember that in Brussels we had a conference, Africa, and there was a wonderful girl actually who came. She was Miss Geek Africa, and her focus was very much on coding for girls. So just a word on that?
Yes. The organization I work for, Andela, is all about coding. Our trade is software engineering. Why did we pick coding? Coding, we believe today, is actually a basic skill. It's a basic skill that would like each and every child to learn, in addition to literacy and numeracy. Why coding? Coding is inherently about enabling somebody to be innovative, okay? Because when you code, you essentially find solutions to problems. You can't code for nothing. You code so that you can fix a problem. And so coding is something that we are really, really big on. And across Andela, we have entered into partnerships with schools, with other multinational organizations to see that we try to drive knowledge in coding. In my country, I am on a national task force that is advising the government on emerging technologies. And one of the things is we are actually right now working with the curriculum development to see that we introduce coding at different levels. It really is an essential skill that I would love to see in 5 years from now, every 9-year-old in Africa. If they could start coding, that would be brilliant. All the big names I mentioned before, from Bill Gates to Mark Zuckerberg, all these people learned how to code from the age of like 9. By the time they get to 16, which is like the start of your dream years. Dream years because at 16, 17, 18, everything is possible. Life has not yet squeezed you and you don't think, oh, this is hard. No, no, no. During your dream years, anything is possible. Now, if you have the skill that's going to enable you to dream and create, then you're really enabling somebody to change their future. So coding is a strong way to go.
Do it now. Thank you very much, Jackie. Alex, so you are a very patient man, and I have to say, a very interesting person also, because you're doing something that we've been talking about, and you're bridging the gap, and I'm reading from your CV here, between private and public sector players in the ICT industry. So something that can be replicated somewhere else. Give us a little bit of your, what are the strategies you use to ensure that this happens, that we're working in tandem and not in a divisive manner?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having invited me here. Jackie just talked about dream years, and I want to get back to those dream years. Maybe I can also code and hack. But to your point, the strategies that we're using is really things that have been built as way back as early 2000 or late 2000, when the government was setting its 2020 vision, and in which it clearly stated wanted to build towards a service-led economy and transforming our predominantly agrarian economy into a knowledge-based economy. And with that, of course, there are different frameworks that were put in place, but what I can touch on is that ICT was identified as one of the key drivers, and different initiatives were put in place to ensure that, from infrastructure across the country, fiber optic network across the entire country, on all cross borders in every district and every sector, which is the layer we're at. And we've seen that bear fruits, in the sense that now we're at a point where the government is saying, okay, we have all this infrastructure, but what is it for? And in 2012, is when the ICT Chamber was established to be able to facilitate that government-private sector, public-private sector relationships. And what our organization is, it's a non-profit member-based organization for ICT companies in different verticals. So we have fintech, we have e-commerce, we have connectivity and digital infrastructure providers. And what we do is really convening conversations, working with the government on the strategies that they're developing. And maybe for this particular panel on FCTA is I want to mention the project that we're doing with the government on e-commerce. And we all know that you can easily buy stuff. Anyone with a laptop can develop a website and start selling things online. But in order for us to be competitive as a country, what we did working with the government and supported with the ITC, International Trade Center, but with our Ministry of Commerce and Trade, we embarked on a project of a shared infrastructure which provides about 5 things. So there's shared warehousing facility where e-commerce and SMEs that are in this business can come and house their products. So it's an e-fulfillment center. Think of your Amazon fulfillment center, but at a very tiny scale. And we have digital payments that is covered. So it incubates SMEs, but also the tech startups that are building the platforms, so marketplaces and as well as web platforms. And then we have the skills development, I think, which was what Jackie was talking about. But the skills development in this project, we've taken 2 approaches. One, we're looking at the SMEs, because you need to upskill the SMEs, your traditional SMEs that are doing brick and mortar. How do you bring them to the click and mortar, like my colleagues say? Okay, so you need to show them, experiment, be patient with them, take them through different programs that get them to a competitive edge. And then the tech startups as well. Yes, they can code in their bedrooms and build a website, but can they adhere to global competitive standards, like the global code of conduct? How do we get them to have trust marks? Because the customers they're building these websites for to sell the different goods, their customers are in developed markets, some of them, and they're going to be looking out for certain things. GDPR, for instance, that was earlier mentioned. Security. Is my data protected? And this is what we take. These are the kind of skills that we're taking them through under our Digital Business Institute, which again we established in partnership. And that infrastructure that we put will be incubating both the startups and providing all these services. So there's a logistics component as well, so for international and local deliveries. So it's at the very beginning. It's only in Kigali. The plan is to scale it up to the rest of the country through e-commerce hubs, and that's the strategy now we are in discussions with the Ministry of Commerce and building out. So that's in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. A lot to learn, I think, from what Rwanda is doing. Thank you very much, Alex. And I'm going to turn now because our participants have been listening very patiently, and I'm sure there's a lot of curiosity and questions. At least I'm hoping there are. So could I see a show of hands, please, of how many people would like to come into this discussion and ask questions, and then I'll turn to the panel. Yes, please. Yes, I see. 2 ladies over here. I want you to, the 3 actually, I want you to intervene as well. So let's start with the gentleman over there. I think there are microphones. And please, if you have a specific question to someone, just say so. Otherwise, I'll turn to the panel generally. I see you as well. There was a gentleman at the back. Yes, please. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you very much for the discussions. I think this is it's really timely. My question is, want to ask the difficulty that we face as consumers in terms of the internet cost across Africa. It's very expensive and sometimes very, very difficult to access. So how do you guys think that you can bring a solution towards an efficient way of using internet accessible, especially those in the rural area? If you're talking about digitalizations, how would those people really understand the communication when they cannot read or write? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Lady over there, I saw your hand go up. Yes, please. Just introduce yourself very briefly. I think just go ahead. You have a microphone, right? Yeah.
Hello. My name is Doreen Lukandwa. I work with a company called Bionic from Uganda. And my question is, a lot of the discussions have been around B2B sort of discussions, how you are helping SMEs, skilling SMEs, startups, and etc. But what I want to ask, well, generally anybody, including the Ethiopian minister, is what are you doing to fast track digital inclusion or financial inclusion for the C2B or B2C segment?
Great question as well. I saw another hand go up at the back. Yes, that's right. Please, sir.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Je m'appelle Bangoura Waka de la Guinée-Conakry. Et la question que moi j'ai, ça va s'accentuer un peu sur l'intervention de monsieur du Sénégal, dont je ne retiens pas le nom. Et il avait intervenu par rapport à la mise en place d'une plateforme de e-commerce qui était un peu axée sur le modèle sénégalais qu'ils veulent mettre en place. Maintenant, sur son intervention, il est allé dire qu'il faut même élargir cela et mettre ça sur un modèle applicable à toute l'Afrique. Vous savez, la question qui va se poser, ce type d'entreprise, c'est les meilleures entreprises d'ailleurs, qui sont beaucoup bénéfiques à l'Afrique, à l'avenir. Mais le problème qui va se poser à ce niveau, vous savez, bon nombre des consommateurs qui utilisent ce genre de plateforme, ce sont des entreprises qui n'ont pas du tout, qui n'ont pas étudié, c'est-à-dire c'est des personnes qui entreprennent, mais ils ne savent pas s'ils entreprennent. On prend l'exemple sur les personnes qui vivent dans les milieux ruraux, et aussi on prend, par exemple, moi je prends l'exemple sur le cas de la Guinée. La plupart des personnes qui entreprennent là-bas, on peut mettre accent sur des boutiquiers, on peut mettre accent aussi sur les agriculteurs. Et bon nombre des agriculteurs, nous savons, en Afrique, c'est des personnes qui n'ont pas étudié, qui n'ont pas fait des grandes études. Et qui parle de digital, il faut forcément faire recours à quelqu'un au moins qui sait lire, écrire. Donc si on a ce problème-là, est-ce qu'il faut à chaque fois penser, dire à chaque fois, ou chanter même, dire il faut qu'on mette une application, il faut qu'on mette des plateformes. Je pense que ce n'est pas ça à chaque fois il faut chanter. Okay. Plutôt il faut s'intéresser à la question, oui. Comment essayer de permettre à ces gens, de permettre à former ces gens-là, à les sensibiliser, afin qu'ils puissent mieux utiliser ces genres d'outils-là.
Merci beaucoup.
Donc il faut beaucoup s'intéresser à ces personnes-là.
Merci beaucoup pour la question. Happy to take one more question. Sorry, and then I'll turn to the panelists, please, madam.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm Nomvula Makhotla from South Africa. Mine is around the access to the digital platforms for women, especially in the rural areas. I think the issue of digital divide for women and young girls, and especially young people in rural areas, is not only about access to what the representative from Visa is talking about. The issue here is about the softer issues, talking about confidence building amongst them to actually interact with these facilities, with these tools, you know, to demystify and to deal with the fear of discrimination, to build confidence on how to actually take up this tool and utilize it without them being discriminated against. So I think we also need to invest in that type of training, that type of capacity building for the people, especially in the rural areas, and incidental, a few in the urban areas, the older women in urban areas who have never utilized such gadgets.
Absolutely right. Thank you very much for bringing that up as well. Okay, I'm going to turn now back to the panel. I'm going to start with you, Jackie, answering specifically that question. But before you start, very eager, that's great. No, I just also want each of the panelists to sort of be a little crystal ball gazing and say what they think Digital Africa will look like in, Munir, should I say 25 years? Would that be reasonable? Oh, okay. Or should I say 15? You tell me. 15, okay. What Digital Africa would look like in 15 years. So, Jackie, answer, please, the very valid question from the lady there, and then a quick thing on 15 years from now.
I love that question because we actually experience that. We do training in software engineering, and we notice that every time we call for applications to our program, less than 20% of the applicants were women. And we started wondering why. And yet, I firmly believe women are as brilliant, if not more brilliant than men. And so the question was, why are they not coming to the program? And so we carried out surveys and discovered the very points you've been raising. Low self-esteem, lack of confidence in their own abilities, and even when they learn, then they think, maybe I don't really know and all. And so we introduced specific programs that target women. We have a program that is called Women in Tech Leadership. And what we do here is introduce them to the basic concepts. Our target is that when they touch and feel and see themselves do things, they will be able to believe. But it also means you have to create a program that will work for them. And so it cannot be something that is going to run during the daytime when either they are at work or they have to take care of their homes. And so it has to be convenient and workable for them. Our program runs after 6 to 7. They'll come and attend. They're given an assignment for a week. It cannot be too frequent because it will not work with their programs. And so these adjustments, once you start to make them, you start seeing real gains and turn around in the number of women participating in things like this. And the greater value is that you train one woman, she influences her children, her neighbors, her cousins, her grandmother, everything. So for every one woman, you know that the impact will be much greater when it is what. So yes, I agree with you 100%.
And the 15-year vision?
15-year vision, when trains are flying across the space of Addis, the child, yes, trains will start to fly. And what I would say is that, I believe the leapfrog will actually happen in Africa. We are not going to see small steps. It will be a real leap between not being able to read and write, as somebody said, the people in the village cannot do that, to people using voice-enabled solutions to order, to learn, and that kind of thing.
Thank you. That is visionary. Minister, would you like to take up the question on the internet costs, for instance, and also your vision in 15 years?
Yeah, I think it's the role of government to make sure that there is a competitive price in terms of access to data, internet, and all the stuff. Example for Senegal, we've been working over the last 3 years with the regulator, the telecom operators, and the World Bank to try to create what we call the virtual mobile telecom operators that will for sure decrease the price of access to internet, and especially in remote areas, and making it also free of charge for students at universities, at schools, and some public areas to stimulate the use of internet for developing, shopping, coding, whatever young people and school kids are needing. This is something, as I said initially, that the government need to put together the enabling environment, the facilities, and the regulatory framework that will allow the private sector, mainly the big multinationals that are in the telcos company. And the government itself also is and should invest more in the infrastructure, which is submarine cables, the fiber that will ease the access of internet and data and voice to people, especially in rural areas. For instance, if you take the example of mobile penetration rate, Senegal, it's averaging 90%. People have 2 free telephones everywhere. But if you take the internet, I would say it's less than 60%, especially in the rural areas. So this is critical. The vision for 15 years, I don't know if people watched Black Panther, trains flying, cars, and then kind of stuff. I believe we can do that, and then we should.
Okay, cool. All right, let's now go to Munir, and then I'll come up this way, and then the three of you as well. Sorry, we're short of time. I have to finish at 4. Please, Munir.
Thank you. I think a lady had mistaken me for a minister. I'm not a minister.
She's promoting you, Munir. Okay. Say Bismillah.
I'm from the private
go for
sector.
It.
I'm the founder and CEO of a fintech company. Just to clarify
for
that.
The moment.
For the moment. But I think the point of financial inclusion from an Ethiopian context is the government has recently published an homegrown economic reform program in which centered to it is the drive for an inclusive digital economy, whereby it is driven by providing access to financial services to citizens across the country, whether it's to access an account or an insurance or any of the financial services. So B2C is big. By the way, B2B can only function if there's a B2C. So B2B is the enabler, and the B2C is the actual individual account. But just if you give me 1 second to talk about, when we talk about modifying platforms for specific uses, there's no such thing as an African model from a platform perspective. I think every country would have an operational model whereby it will differ from country to country. In Europe, somebody to do e-commerce does not have to go to an agent, for example. They can do it at their house and the goods will be delivered to their house. In Africa, because the addressing system is not well developed, then one could pick it up at an agent location. So these are the operational differences. I don't think the best practices will always be applicable to everybody across the technology world. Coming back to a very interesting question that you have asked in 15 years, I think a good wish to have is within 5 years, if somebody from Rwanda can buy on an electronic platform TEF from Ethiopia and utilize it and bake a very nice cake, TEF cake in Rwanda using a digital platform. In 15 years, my wish is that every African adult to have access to a digital store of value, because the biggest challenge for financial inclusion or to create an inclusive economy is the lack of access of a digital store of value. And that, if we can achieve it in 15 years for every African adult to have that digital store of value, then I think we have succeeded in creating an inclusive economy across the continent.
Thank you, Munir. Alex, please.
So I'll just maybe touch on the question that was asked about rural women and their ICT, digital literacy. Some initiatives that we started actually some years ago, but really taking proper shape around this year, is the Digital Ambassadors Program. And the Digital Ambassadors Program, what it does is trains young girls and boys, from that have just completed university or high school and deploys them at the village level. to educate and to help to help rural people on digital literacy. So that's maybe one of the initiatives that we're seeing, we're projecting to have impact and help reduce that divide. We have others that just for coding. I think she touched one that is Miss Geek, which we really push a lot as well. But on the 15 years, I think that was the only question that is general. But my 15-year dream is free internet. Mm-hmm. So really, that's free internet. Internet, to me, is as good as roads. And there's only a few toll roads in Africa. And if we say data is gold or is the new gold, then we should build roads that lead to that data, or roads that help create that data. And I believe that providing people with free internet, this is something governments should be thinking about, really. I know, of course, from a private sector perspective, it is a bad campaign, but we should look at it from this bottle of water view, that water that is not clean, that is not purified, that is not bottled, costs differently from this. And I think that's really where now the new value should be created by ISPs and the telecoms. So that's my dream.
That's what Santa should bring you.
Yeah.
15 years. Thank you very much. Omar, please.
Yeah. Je vais répondre à mon ami qui vient de la Guinée. C'est pour te dire que, tu vois, le digital a cette chose de magnifique qui fait que les gens n'ont pas forcément besoin de faire beaucoup d'études pour le comprendre. Et actuellement, je vais te donner l'exemple au Sénégal, un exemple basique d'un pêcheur qui n'a jamais fait d'études, qui va en pêche, en revenant, il a son smartphone, il photographie les poissons qu'il a, il envoie dans son groupe WhatsApp. Et les gens commentent sur WhatsApp. Tu vois? Et les gens n'ont pas besoin aussi de savoir écrire. Parce qu'actuellement, on a la technologie, la voix et l'image qui sont très développées, que les gens utilisent. On le voit sur les plateformes existantes, que ce soit WhatsApp, comment je vais dire ça? WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook. Et sur le modèle de e-commerce africain, là où on doit aller, c'est innover dans le sens où on sait que le modèle de e-commerce occidental, c'est-à-dire un site internet d'une marque avec ses produits, n'est pas forcément adapté à l'Afrique. Par contre, en Afrique, tout le monde est sur les réseaux sociaux. Beaucoup de gens vendent sur WhatsApp, beaucoup de gens vendent sur Instagram, beaucoup de gens vendent sur Facebook. Je connais une dame qui fait plus de $100 000 de chiffre d'affaires sur WhatsApp, sur un groupe WhatsApp. Tu vois? Donc c'est des choses comme ça que nous devons adapter à nos réalités. Et actuellement, l'exemple du Sénégal, ça se fait. Je connais une start-up qui travaille sur l'intelligence artificielle où ils permettent aux gens de pouvoir interagir par la voix, mais surtout pour les langues. C'est-à-dire, j'arrive, je mets son outil sur ma plateforme, quelqu'un qui parle en Wolof, moi je peux l'écouter en Pulaar ou en Sérère, d'autres langues sénégalaises. Donc c'est possible. C'est juste à nous d'adapter ces technologies à nos réalités. Voilà. Donc pour ma vision sur les 15 ans, ça va être, je suis dans la logistique, cross-border, un continent avec moins de barrières douanières, mais surtout moins de barrières non financières. Voilà, pour faciliter les échanges.
Merci beaucoup, Omar. Mamadou, s'il te plaît.
Oh, no, I think that I won't say much because some of the issues that have been raised, I think, have been eloquently addressed in terms of educational barriers and other types of barriers. But in my vision for 15 years is a truly integrated Africa where people can travel freely and free movement of people, goods, and resources become a reality. Thanks.
Paul, for you, please.
Okay, so I think as I deal with Africa for many years. From my perspective, Africa is a mine of innovation. We, based on our experience, together with our African partners, create some innovative approach and new things. So I think in 15 years, my imagination is too limited to say where and how far we will be. But definitely, I would emphasize that it's gonna be a strong development of remote learning, so that everybody who will have an access for internet for free or ease, with a huge ease, will have the ability to develop himself in a new aspects, new skills in agriculture, in a different areas of the economy, and it's gonna be a self-developing and building the effect of the snowball, which will be bigger and bigger. So that's what I wish, and that's what I strongly believe in.
And what you're working for, in a way. So, Khalifa, please.
Okay. Thank you, and all the topics really have been well analyzed. So I'll just go to the final 15-year dream for Africa, is to take everything that they have said to create more of a borderless Africa, where CFTA is one of the first steps. But how can we move freely, like it has been mentioned? How can goods move freely, where we can now look at this economy as one economy, where a young person in Gambia or in Senegal or in Ghana can innovate and create solutions that he can target a market of 1.2 billion people or more. This is the dream that we want to see, where we start seeing young Africans become billionaires.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for all the panelists for really being very, very meticulous about sticking to the timelines that I set for them. It's interesting, you know, I'm not going to summarize anything because I've really learned a lot as well, but it was in June this year that Friends of Europe held a conference called Transforming Africa, and we had many tech entrepreneurs, including women entrepreneurs, come to Brussels to talk about what they were doing in Africa. And the challenges they spoke about are so much the same issues that we've been talking about here. You know, it was about access to credit, money, skills, regulatory barriers, synergies, and, you know, the enabling environment, the stakeholders. It was about security, but also very much, Madam, the issue that you talked about, which is women's empowerment and confidence building in order to be able to use the tools that exist. So I think we're really working on the same lines. We're working in parallel. And my dream for 15 years is really that Europe and Africa work really as equal partners together to achieve, and I'm going to use Agenda 2030, because I think many of the things that we've been talking about here, including gender empowerment, are really, and energy for all, are really part of Agenda 2030. So with that, I'd like to thank all our panelists, my panelists, if you like, the gentleman and the lady, for being here, yourselves for asking the questions, and once again, thank you for International Trade Center for inviting me here. Thank you.